a webinar on physiology of exercises. So I would like to invite Dr. Santosh Jadumani, MPT, Honorary President of KSPF. Sir, are you there?
Yeah. Karen. I'm here.
So moving on to today's speaker. So today's speaker is Dr. Bipin Punit. Sir has done his MPT and currently working as professor and principal at Florence College of Physiotherapy. So Sir has done his masters and bachelors from NITE Institute of Physiotherapy, Mangalore, and Sir is a certified art of manipulation therapist, and he was a former registered physiotherapist in UK. Sir has published 2 research papers in Innovative Journal of Medical and Health Science, and Sir was resource person for so many conferences, and he was the first annual JSS Cardiovascular Symposium on speaker on first annual JSS Cardiovascular Symposium on cardiac rehabilitation held on 27th July 2014, and Sir was the first national level physiotherapist postgraduate in that conference, delivered a talk on risk factor modification in lifestyle diseases, which was on 17th and 18th August 2013. Sir was a resource person for workshop on work-related musculoskeletal disorders in nursing professionals, conducted by JSS CPT on November 30th, 2012, and was also resource person on conference Criticon and delivered lecturer on cardiac rehabilitation, conducted by Vikram Hospital on Feb 23rd to 25th, 2012. So over to you, sir. Hope you all will use this session and take a very good message. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam, for introducing me. Shall I take over, madam, or?
No, Didimani, sir.
Just sir, 1 second, sir. Just I'll welcome you. Then you can carry on, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, welcome everybody, those who are joining, and please, my welcome to you, sir, for your innovative ideas for us, and thank you for conducting this webinar for us, and we are very privileged to work with you continuously regarding this. As a honorary president of KSPF, I welcome you, and you can carry on, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh Jadumani, for welcoming me, and it is a pleasure for me also to do this webinar under Karnataka State Physiotherapy Federation. And I thank Dr. Kirti Priya also for giving me a brief introduction. Some people may know me, but let me tell about my background. After my graduation, I worked in Vikram Hospital. It was a cardiac hospital, and here I got passionate about treating cardiac patients. So I got an opportunity later to work in JSS College of Physiotherapy. Here I worked for more than 15 years and initiated the cardiac rehabilitation department in JSS Hospital. So in Vikram Hospital, when I was working, I had this passionate towards developing the cardiac rehab department, and finally I got an opportunity to initiate it in JSS Hospital with the help of the current principal, Dr. Kavita Raja. And later, due to various reasons, I had an opportunity to work abroad in Abu Dhabi for 2 years. And when I was working in Abu Dhabi, I got an opportunity to treat a lot of orthopedic patients, and that is where I got I became passionate about manipulation, and then I got a certification on manipulation. So after coming back from Abu Dhabi, I had an opportunity to work in Florence College of Physiotherapy as professor and principal. This was with help of all my friends and present here in Bangalore, and it is indeed a pleasure to be working in a college which is a very old college, and trying to do my best over there. So now this not to forget about my family, I would just like to share my screen. Can you see the screen, madam?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You can keep it in slide point view. Yeah, sir. Now it is visible.
Okay. So not to forget about my family, who is always there to support me and acknowledge me for whatever I do. So this is my family. My wife, her name is Rashmi, and my daughter, who is 6 years old, and she's very naughty and keeps me busy when I'm free. And this is about my personal life. And also not to forget my parents, who are always supporting and helping and giving encouragement to grow better each day. So this is about the family that I have. Let us go on to the topic for today, that is physiology of exercise. So I would like to just mention the overview of today's presentation. That is a type of exercise, muscle metabolism. I would be talking about the different metabolic um, events that happens during exercise, energy source during exercise, the oxygen consumption during exercise, the respiratory response to exercise, cardiovascular response to exercise, muscle response to exercise, and hormonal response to exercise. So, madam, I'm audible, no? It's clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's clear.
Okay, so let us go on and start with understanding what is a physical activity. So physical activity is a body movement produced by muscle action that increases energy expenditure. So, and to know what is exercise, it is a planned, structured, repetitive rhythmic movement and a purposeful physical activity given to the body parts to keep it healthy and develop the body parts. So this is the definition of exercise. This is the definition given by WHO. So why do we exercise? So what is the reason we exercise? The reason we exercise is to have a healthy lifestyle, and also it helps to lower the risk of disease and premature death. So that is the importance of exercise. And we being physiotherapists, we always prescribe a lot of exercise. So the understanding of how this exercise work is very much essential. So coming to what is physiology of exercise. The physiology of exercise is the description and explanation of the function changes brought about by single or repeated exercise session. So it is the explanation and functional changes brought about by single or repeated exercise session. So the study of the effects of exercise on the function of tissues, organs, and system is known to be the physiology of exercise. So why study physiology of exercise? So why do we need to study about these exercises? This is to choose the right fitness test for anybody who is understanding, or who is an athlete. You know what are the components that he normally, or what is the intensity he works on. So it will be helpful to understand his fitness, and we can by these exercises we can give him prescribe right exercises for him to uh, train himself. So the next is prescribe safe and effective exercise, and that is also important. We need to understand what is the requirement of the particular person, or whether he's an athlete or whether he's a normal person. So based on that, you can prescribe safe and effective exercise. Then optimize training time. Okay, so a particular person might require training time depending on the level of fitness or level of competition he is going to play in. So depending on that, you can decide the training time, you to understanding the need of for exercises for him to build up his to the competitive level. Then improve health and well-being, and it also helps in improve fitness and athletic performance, and understand the demands on the body during physical work, and also prescribe injury and illness recovery plans. So definitely when a person is injured, you can understand the nature of injury, and also understand what type of exercise he needs to be doing and what is the energy that he's going to spend, and all these things can be done if you understand the physiology of exercise. Also promote worthwhile physical activity for children and adults. Okay, these are the need for the study of physiology of exercise. So who should study exercise physiology? Okay, so the exercise physiology has to be studied by the exercise physiologist, the clinical exercise physiologist, the physical therapist, which we come across a lot of patients where we are prescribing exercise regularly, the biomechanists, the strength and conditional coaches, the personal trainers, the fitness health facility managers, the worksite wellness coordinators, and the group fitness instructors, athletic trainers, then physical educators, dietitians, and also the clinicians. Very less clinicians read about physiology of exercise, but it is necessary for them also to understand the physiology that happens, or the metabolic events that happens during exercise. So where to look for information of these exercises? This is in American College of Sports Medicine. You can look into the other brief information that is available in various sites, and availability, authentic information is available in these areas. So what are the types of exercise? So we have two types of exercise. One is isometric exercise and another is dynamic exercise. What do you mean by isometric exercise? It has a constant muscle length and increased tension. And in dynamic exercise, there is a rhythmic cycles of contraction and relaxation, and there is change in muscle length. So these are the two types of exercise, and let us see what is the energy expenditure that happens when we do not exercise, that is energy at rest. So almost 100% of ATP produced by aerobic metabolism in rest. So in rest, we do not have any anaerobic activity taking place. It is purely by aerobic metabolism, and the blood lactate level are low as less than 1 millimole of per liter, and resting oxygen consumption would be 3.5 ml per kg per minute, which we call it as one metabolic equivalent of rest. So this is the normal energy expenditure we do have, and we also use this to calculate various exercise or various metabolic equivalents in various intensity of exercises. So continuing the type of exercise, we also have anaerobic exercise where predominantly white muscle fibers are working, and these are the large diameter fibers which are light in color, and which is having low myoglobin, and surrounded by few capillaries and relatively few mitochondria with high glycogen content, and they have a ready supply of glucose for glycolysis. So this is the muscle that is responsible, and it is usually in sprinting and weightlifting, these muscle fibers are more active, and it is only for short duration, and it is a high intensity exercise, and these are also called as fast twitch muscle fibers, which works on creatine phosphate plus glycogen from muscle. So the glucose is stored in the muscle, and it usually works in the ATP PC system, where the instant energy is delivered, and it is only for a short period of time. So continuing, what are the types of under types of exercise? We have aerobic exercise, where predominantly red muscle fibers are more in use, and these are red in color with high myoglobin content, and it is surrounded by many capillaries, where the blood supply is rich, and they do get a lot of oxygen. So that way it is sustainable for more aerobic metabolism, and there is numerous mitochondria, and also low glycogen content. They also metabolize fatty acid and proteins, which are broken down into acetyl CoA, and which enters the Krebs cycle for energy metabolism. So there are usually we have different generators for producing energy for various activity. So it depends on the level of intensity of activity. If the intensity of activity is very high, then it is the ATP PCR system, and in aerobic exercise it is more of the electron transport chain and the glycolysis that takes over and produces the energy source for the exercises. So the aerobic exercise usually example are the long distance running and swimming. Here it is a prolonged exercise, but at a lower intensity. The intensity of exercise is 50 to 60% of VO2 max, and these are slow twitch muscle fibers, and fuel stored in muscle and adipose tissue and liver are the major fuel source. The major fuel used vary with the intensity and duration of exercise. So the fuel also varies with the how long you're going to exercise, and based on the intensity of exercise. So the source is glucose, and in the early stages, and the free fatty acid in the later stages. When you talk about glucose, it will be moderate intensity exercise where glucose will be available for aerobic metabolism, but for free fatty acid it will be more of a slow intensity exercise, like a slow walking or slow jogging, where you can do for a longer period of time. So if for a fat metabolism to take place, it has to be slow intensity exercise, and this type of exercise is based only based on presence of oxygen. So how do muscle cells obtain the energy to perform the exercises? So the energy is derived from the adenosine triphosphate, and you can see here the high energy bonds, and when there is the bonds, when they meet, they produce the adenosine triphosphate in the ATP PC cycle, and this instant energy is produced from the glucose in the muscle. Muscles tend to contain only limited quantities of ATP, and when depleted, ATP needs to be resynthesized from the other sources, namely creatine phosphate and muscle glycogen. So let us see how there is a transition of rest to exercise, how the transition takes place. So if you see this graph, so in the x-axis you can see the time, and in the y-axis you can see the VO2, the maximum amount of oxygen consumption, and the ATP usage. So during rest, you can see the this blue part, which is more of aerobic energy, and the orange part is more of anaerobic energy. So if you see this graph, you can see the amount of oxygen consumption that is happening during the rest phase, where it is very minimal. But when you initiate or start the exercise, you can clearly make out that there is a sudden spike in the usage of ATP. You can see this golden line here, which is present here, which mentions about the usage of ATP and as the exercise begins, but the oxygen consumption is much more slower and it picks up slowly and reaches the intensity. So this is when you just start a treadmill at 3 miles, and you are starting exercises at 3 miles and per hour, and you kept the speed and you started exercising. So the initial energy source is through this ATP usage, and slowly the aerobic also participates in the energy production or giving the energy to the body. And there is also sudden oxygen deficit that happens during this time, where there is lack of oxygen here, but this is called as the metabolism here is taking place is anaerobic. So there will be an oxygen deficit that happens where during each level of training. So once you are if you are keeping on training at 3 miles per hour, then it will be at a steady state, unless and until you increase the intensity of exercise, which can again shoot up the ATP production, and also more requirement of ATP for utilization in the energy metabolism process. So again, you can see the oxygen curve here. The VO2 max is slowly picking up and trying to maintain with the anaerobic energy metabolism. So during this period, again, when you try, every time intensity is increased, you have some kind of oxygen deficit, and this can be at around 6 miles per hour when you do a treadmill. And further, if you increase the intensity at 8 miles per hour, you can see the amount of oxygen deficit that is occurring, and as well as the aerobic metabolism that is taking place to catch up with the anaerobic energy production for consumption. So you can clearly make out about how these energies are being utilized with aerobic and anaerobic metabolism, and you can see the time also. So initially you can see that 0 to time, how the time increases, the amount of deficit also is slowly increasing, but at the same time the anaerobic activity is also contributing for energy production. So the ATP production increases instantaneously when you start an exercise. So it is initial the ATP PC system that starts giving the energy source for this kind of activity. Then once the ATP system, this is for a very short duration, about 1 to 3 seconds, and the followed by glycolysis, which continues to give the energy source. So prior to the steady state, an oxygen deficit is created. So this is the oxygen deficit that is created. That is a lag in oxygen uptake at the beginning of exercise or after an increase in exercise intensity. So these are the lag that happens due to oxygen deficit. So this deficit can vary with different kind of people. When I mention different kind of people, it is to understand the how well the person is trained, whether he is trained or untrained. So depending on the training levels, this can vary, the oxygen deficit vary. If it's a highly trained individual, this deficit, this aerobic metabolism tries to maintain with the anaerobic metabolism, but if it's an untrained, it is much faster that deficit occurs with these kind of individuals. So trained subjects have lower oxygen deficit due to cardiovascular or muscular adaptations, also result in less production of lactate and hydrogen, which is an acidic form, and reduces the energy production or ATP production. So oxygen uptake increases rapidly and reaches a steady state within 1 to 4 minutes of low intensity continuous exercise. And after a steady state is reached, ATP requirement is met primarily through aerobic ATP production. So this is what I mentioned to say, that when there is a steady state, the aerobic metabolism takes over and produces the energy. And whenever there is a sudden increase in intensity, again the whatever source of energy from the glucose that is stored in the muscle or the ATP PC system that contributes for producing the energy. So to understand what happens in muscle, what you understand by muscle metabolism, so there is a increase as the exercise intensity increases, the increase in ADP and the inorganic phosphates that is present, and reduction in the creatine phosphate in the skeletal muscle happens. Due to this reduction, there is the ATP-PC system is fails, and it initiates by the byproducts. The byproducts from this metabolism initiates for glucolysis, and this energy system starts functioning to supply the energy once the first generator stops the energy supplement, and followed by increased oxidative phosphorylation, which supports for energy production. This is more of aerobic metabolism. So the low ATP and creatine phosphate stimulated glycolysis and oxidative phosphorylation, and exercise can increase rates of ATP formation. So what is the, how is this ATP source? Sorry. How is the ATP source coming in our body? The ATP source is the, as I told, the ATP-PC system, that is the the glucose or creatine phosphate stored in the muscle, which produces energy in first few seconds. Then you have glycolysis after produces energy after approximately 8 to 10 seconds. Then you have aerobic respiration, where it achieves maximum rate after 2 to 4 minutes of exercise initiation. And the oxygen depth I was mentioning in the previous slide, where the lactic acid is converted to back to pyruvic acid, is to it is like kind of a repayment of what you have taken out from the bank. So it is like whatever stored oxygen that was utilized in the ATP-PC system or the muscle glucose will be converted back to pyruvic acid, or rephosphorylation of creatinine using ATP from oxidative phosphorylation or glycogen synthesis, and oxygen rebinds to myoglobin and hemoglobin. So this is like replenishing whatever energy that has been utilized in the metabolism or for during exercise, and this happens usually later when you are at rest. But these are the different ATP source that is getting utilized in the various metabolism. So you can see here in this picture, where in 0 to 10 seconds you can see the phosphogen system and the aerobic respiration using oxygen from myoglobin, that is the glucose, and the ATP PC system that gets activated between 0 to 10 seconds. So it is hardly producing energy to somewhere in between, and once this energy is completely utilized, then it initiates glycogen lactic acid system, where it is initiated by the byproducts that is being produced from these cycles and these energy sources. And this, once the glycogen system where the pyruvic acid and the lactic acid gets accumulated with the presence of NADH. So this system will again initiate the aerobic respiration, where the aerobic respiration takes over, and aerobic metabolism. But it all depends on the intensity of exercise. Here you might be working in a high intensity exercise, and as it progresses with the exercise, the intensity and performance of the exercises also comes down, as we are going into different energy systems. So to understand better, so ATP source during intense exercise, you can see in this graph the energy production rate and exercise performance. It is what are the different energy sources. So you can see the green line here, which is the ATP, stored ATP that has been utilized rapidly. So see the amount of the rate at which the production of energy takes place. It is very high. So it is only up till 3 seconds. So the first 3 seconds of exercise, primarily free available stored ATP is utilized, and it is only lasting up to first 3 seconds. And slowly you can see this purple line, which is taking over from the stored ATP. The purple line indicates the phosphocreatinine, where it again produces a high energy. You can see the high energy performance, and the exercise performance here is very high, and at the same time it is lasting only for up to 15 seconds. So first 3 to 15 seconds of exercise, primarily you have a PC system that is taking over for as an energy production source. Then further you can see the intense exercise where you have glycolysis pathway taking up for the energy source. You can see the beginning of the glycolysis that is happening, and it is slowly peaks between 15 to 45 seconds. So you can see up to 45 seconds you can see the glycolysis taking over. The progression with the intense exercise from 45 to 120 seconds, it is more of aerobic activity or the aerobic system that takes over. So progression from primarily glycolysis to primarily aerobic system takes over in between this 45 to 120 seconds. So at 60 seconds, you have 70%. You can see at 60 seconds, you can see 70% of glycolysis and 30% of aerobic metabolism contributing for energy source. So at 120 seconds, you can see 50% glycolysis energy source and 50% aerobic source. So at 60 seconds, it was more still more with the glycolytic pathway, and as you progress with the exercise intensity, the once the glycolysis energy is depleted, you see the aerobic activity taking over for energy production. So intense exercise greater than 120 seconds, usually the primarily aerobic mix of fats and carbohydrates. It's very difficult whether it is carbohydrates or fat metabolism that is happening here, but mostly you can say that in high intensity exercise it is more of carbohydrate metabolism and use of more of carbohydrates, and in a low intensity exercise it is more of fat metabolism that occurs. So how does this energy liberation happens? So you can see the energy liberation speed versus the total available energy. So you can see the total available energy of the PC system is very low, but the energy liberation is very fast. So as the glycolysis also, the energy liberation is very slow, and you can see uh, the energy liberation when there is carbohydrate, and when it becomes aerobic it is very high, and when it is fat it goes very high. But here the intensity will be at lower intensity. Here when I say fat, it does not mean that it is a quite obese patient. So it is a normal person where the fat metabolism takes place, and it produces high total available of energy for any intensity of exercise, I mean low intensity exercise. So phosphocreatinine, it is an immediate energy release but highly limited total capacity. So glycolysis, where fast glycolysis ending in lactic acid, and very fast but highly limited because of the buildup of lactic acid and somewhat limited of carbohydrate storage. The glycolysis taking place because and the ending in lactic acid storage, and here carbohydrates slow glycolysis ending in pyruvic acid that is metabolized aerobically. Moderate to slow speed and up to 2 hours of energy capacity is there, and in fat metabolism always aerobic, and it is very slow speed but can sustain exercise nearly indefinitely in a healthy well fed adult. So what is the energy source during exercise? The energy source during exercise, as I told you, it was the ATP-BC, which we call it as alactic anaerobic source. The glucose from stored glycogen in the absence of oxygen it is called as a lactic anaerobic source, and the glucose lipid protein in the presence of oxygen is called as aerobic source. So let us see the analactic aerobic source. For explosive sports, weightlifting, jumping, throwing are the common sports where this analactic anaerobic source is utilized, and usually 100 meters running or 50 meters swimming. So immediate available and can't generally be maintained more than 8 to 10 seconds. That's why they have also high white fibers, and the ATP stored in the muscle is sufficient for about 3 seconds of maximal effort, and glycolysis of 8 to 10 seconds. So the ATP and CP regeneration needs the energy from oxygen source, and this is about the analactic anaerobic source. And in fast exhaustic energy, there is increase in anaerobic glycolysis rate, and in the absence of oxygen, anaerobic condition, muscle is able to work for about 1 to 2 minutes because of hydrogen accumulation and decrease in pH. Sprinter can synthesize ATP at the maximum speed by anaerobic pathway, which lasts for less than about 60 seconds, and lactic acid accumulates, and one of the rate controlling enzymes of the glycolytic pathway is strongly inhibited in this acidity. So coming to lactic anaerobic source, for short intense sports, it is the energy source that has been utilized, like gymnastic, or 200 to 1000 meters running, or 100 to 300 meters swimming. So for less than 2 minutes of effort, it is utilized, and the recovery time after a maximal effort is 1 to 2 hours in lactic anaerobic source, and medium effort better than passive recovery. So medium effort, and I will talk about active and passive recovery later. The recovery lactate used for oxidation muscles and glycogenosis in the liver is replenished. So you can see the anaerobic glycolysis, where glycogen is produced, and the recovery is taking place after the lactate used for oxidation and gluconeogenesis in the liver is replenished. So there is interaction between aerobic and anaerobic ATP production. So you can see how aerobic and anaerobic interaction takes place. So you can see the relative energy contribution in y-axis and maximal effort exercise time. So you can clearly tell about like 1 to 3 seconds. You can see the 100 meters run, or which is a high energy source, and it is relatively anaerobic activity, you can see how fast the energy depletion takes place. So in 10 seconds and in 30 seconds and in 60 seconds, the aerobic metabolism slowly picks up. And as the time progresses, the anaerobic metabolism slowly depletes with you can see the different sports activities. So here, if there is a moderate runner, a school or a college athlete where he can, where he runs and utilizes both aerobic and anaerobic activity, especially in the 800-meter run and boxing, you can see here. So the energy to perform exercise comes from a mixture of aerobic and anaerobic energy production. Longer duration, lower the intensity exercise favors aerobic energy production. Shorter duration, high intensity exercise favors anaerobic energy production. So you can decide which energy source is required for tennis and soccer players. Usually both anaerobic and aerobic pathways is required for energy production in both the cases. So let us come to recovery from exercise. So if you see the chart again, where you can see the excess post oxygen consumption is happening after the exercise has stopped. So as I told you earlier in the graph where oxygen deficit happens, here you can see the exercise post oxygen consumption. So it is gradually coming down, and but still there is a fast component and or a rapid component or a slow component. So you can see there is only 20% of oxygen that is in the EPOC, where the oxygen the deficit is being replenished, the 20% of EPOC. But in the rapid component portion of EPOC is a resynthesis of stored PC takes place, and replenishing muscle and blood oxygen stores. So majority of the EPOC where resynthesis of stored phosphokinase and replenishing muscle and blood oxygen stores. So the slow portion of EPOC due to high metabolism after exercise is due to also the hormones that is released. So that is elevated epinephrine and non-epinephrine also, which increases the metabolic rate and conversion of lactic acid to glucose. So the slow portion, in slow portion excess post exercise oxygen consumption, you have the hormone that is contributing so or replenishing for metabolism. And here as the increased metabolic rate, the lactic acid also is converted to glucose through gluconeogenesis. So the greater the exercise intensity, the higher the exercise higher the excess post exercise oxygen consumption, and same goes for oxygen deficit. So the greater the exercise intensity, the greater will be the oxygen deficit. So effects of training. You can see how the training reduces blood lactate level, blood lactic acid levels at work rates between approximately 50% and 100% of VO2 max. So the blood lactic acid and the relative work. So when you start the exercise, the blood lactate level remains very normal, and when there is more than 50% to 100% when VO2 max is achieved, the lactate level in the blood shoots up tremendously because of the lack of by the components here. And you can see the difference between an untrained and trained, how the lactic acid accumulation takes place. So because of lactic acid accumulation, we usually have muscle fatigue. There is decrease in ATP and accumulation of ADP and PI and reduction of creatine and phosphate. So decreased calcium pumping and release to and from sarcoplasmic reticulum, so which decreases contraction and relaxation. So there is also ionic imbalances taking place, and the muscle cell is less responsive to motor neuron stimulation also. So all this contributes to developing muscle fatigue at immediately after or after the exercise. So what is the role of lactic acid? Means it causes decrease the rate of ATP hydrolysis, decrease efficiency of glycolytic enzymes, decrease calcium binding to troponin, decrease interaction between actin and myosin, and also during rest is converted back to pyruvic acid and oxidized by skeletal muscle or converted to glucose in the liver. So how does the removal of lactic acid after exercise takes place? So recent evidence says that 70% of lactic acid is oxidized or turned back into pyruvate to enter the Krebs cycle. So the used as an energy substrate by heart and skeletal muscle, and 20% is converted to glucose in the liver through gluconeogenesis called the Cori cycle, and 10% converted to amino acids. So you can see the blood lactate level. You have both active and passive recovery. So in the active recovery, we normally mention about the cool down exercise, and passive recovery is the recovery which happens without any exercise. So active recovery, you can see there is a slight increase in the graph and then fall. This may be due to the lactate that is present in the muscle, which started flushing out into the bloodstream, and once there is increase in this increase happens, and slowly it starts cooling down because there is continuous blood circulation happening during active recovery. But in passive recovery, this is not happening, and it takes much more time for it to for the lactic acid to completely be removed from the blood. So eventually you can see that within 2 hours from the stoppage of exercise, you can see that the lactic acid is completely removed from the blood. So lactic acid is removed more rapidly with light exercise in recovery, and optimal intensity is 30 to 40% VO2 max. So all buildup lactate is gone within about 60 to 100 minutes. So what you understand by lactate threshold, the point at which blood lactate begins to rise rapidly during incremental exercise. So untrained 50 to 60% VO2 max, and trained is 65 to 80% of VO2 max. You can see here in the graph the blood lactate and the work rate. So as the work rate is increases, or the duration of exercise increases, the percentage is estimated of VO2 max, and you can see the lactate threshold is reaching, and once it reaches at this point where the energy source is depleted here, the lactic acid accumulation fires up and accumulation takes place. So at 50 to 60% VO2 max for an untrained individual, and for a trained individual it is 65 to 80%, and you can see for this person it is 66.8% VO2 max. So similar concept, that is ventilatory threshold, is also the same concept, where it relates to ventilation and not lactate, but is caused by a person reaching their lactate threshold and using bicarbonate to reduce acidity of blood by expelling additional CO2. So the ventilator, though oxygen supply is there, but it will not be able to be utilized because of complete exhaustion of energy. So potential causes for reaching lactate threshold is low muscle oxygen, that is hypoxia, accelerated glycolysis, that is NADH, and produce faster than it is shuttled into mitochondria, and excess NADH in cytoplasm converts pyruvic acid to lactic acid. So because of there is no byproduct for in the glycolysis to produce ATP. So this accumulation, excessive NADH and pyruvic acid converts into lactic acid. So if we can prevent or if it is utilizing this NADH in the metabolism, the lactic acid accumulation is slow down. So this can happen only in the trained individuals. And recruitment of fast twitch muscle fibers means lactate dehydrogenase iso isoenzyme is in fast fibers, has higher affinity for pyruvate, which promotes lactic acid formation. So the lactate dehydrogenase isoenzyme is a fast fiber and has higher affinity for pyruvate, which promotes lactic acid formation. So a reduced rate of lactate removal from blood by tissues that will use lactate for fuel also is a cause of potential cause for reaching lactate threshold. So what are the practical use of lactate threshold? So when you combine with VO2 max, it is good way of predicting performance. So combine with VO2 max means if you can combine the data of lactate threshold and VO2 max, you can predict the exercise performance. And planning and training program for athletes. So marker for training intensity relatively to an individual's bioenergetics. You have to choose a training heart rate based on heart rate and lactate threshold. So does lactic acid cause next day muscle soreness? So the recent research says the DOMS is happening at 24 to 48 hours after exercise. So power athletes should experience DOMS after most workouts, and health fitness oriented exercise should rarely experience soreness. So due to low intensity exercises. So usually the higher intensity exercise performers like athletes develop DOMS because the intensity of exercise is very high, and whenever the intensity of exercise is very high, there is the Z lines or the cross bridge formation in the muscle is happening rapidly, and there could be whenever there is rapid contractions or the cross bridge formation happening, there could be an micro trauma occurring. So the delayed onset muscle soreness is more seen in power athletes, and the public believes the lactic acid production causes DOMS. The physiological evidence does not support the claim, and the lactate removal is rapid within 60 to 100 minutes, as I told you earlier, following exercise. So within 2 hours after exercise, the lactic acid is completely drained off from the blood. And what does cause muscle soreness is microscopic injury, as I told, to the muscle fibers that leads to inflammation. So now starting with the aerobic source for long sports, after 2 to 4 minutes of exercise, usually the aerobic source, usually the carbohydrate, lipids, and possible proteins is participating in the energy production. The chief fuel utilization gradually shifts from carbohydrate to fat depending on the intensity of the exercise. Here, if it is high intensity, it is more of carbohydrate that goes for energy production, and if it's a low intensity exercise, it is more of a fat that goes into metabolic source. The key of this adjustment is hormonal, and the key to this adjustment is hormonal increase in fat mobilizing hormones. And recovery time after maximal effort is 24 to 48 hours. So why oxidation of glucose is so important in an endurance exercise? Most high endurance athletes use carbohydrate loading as nutrition regime a few days prior to the event, because carbohydrate loading is known to produce an increase in stored muscle glycogen. So the stored muscle glycogen is energy source in a glycolysis pathway, which is known to prolong exercise along with improve long-term performance. So what the rate of free fatty acid utilization? The rate of free fatty acid utilization by muscle is limited. Oxidation of fat can only support around 60% of maximal aerobic output. So if it is VO2 max of between 60 to 80%, it is more of carbohydrates that is participating in the energy production. Restricted blood flow through adipose tissue, that is one more reason for the free fatty acid utilization. And there is insufficient albumin to carry free fatty acids, and glucose oxidation limits muscle ability to oxidize lipids. And perhaps the ability to run at high intensity for long period was not important in terms of evolution, because to escape from a predator was more important. I think that's why we have high intensity for long period was not evoluted. The rate of free fatty utilization, you can see the prolonged intense exercise, there is a increase glycogenolysis, and increased glycolysis happens, followed by glycogen depletion, and exercise ends, because this is a common thing which you can see in marathon runners describe as hitting the wall. So what happens here is the circulating glucose cannot be sufficient for high intensity rate of glycolysis, and fat can only support around 60% of maximal aerobic power output. So the muscle glycogen content, which is in gram, reduces as the duration of exercise increases, and results in exhaustion, which causes hitting the wall. So often the intensity of exercise performed is defined as a percentage of VO2 max. So for less than 50% of VO2 max, you can see glycogen uses less than 50%, and free fatty acid use predominant plus small amounts of blood glucose. If it is a greater than 50% of VO2 max, carbohydrate use increases, and glycogen depletion causes with exhaustion, as I told you in the previous slide. And in 70 to 80% of VO2 max, glycogen depletion after 1.5 to 2 hours and happens, and in 90 to 100% of VO2 max, glycogen use is the highest, but depletion does not occur with exhaustion. So because of decreased pH and increase of metabolites limit the performance. So what is the oxygen consumption during exercise? So increase exercise work, increase oxygen usage. So the person maximum oxygen consumption will be achieved with VO2 max. You can see the work rate and VO2, the linear increase between oxygen consumption and exercise intensity. So as the exercise intensity increases, the VO2 max, VO2 reaches its peak, and it achieves a max. And if the activity is sustained for a certain period of time, then VO2 peak also is achieved. Metabolic response to incremental exercise. The oxygen uptake increases linearly until maximal oxygen uptake, that is VO2 max, is reached. Physiological factors influencing VO2 max is the maximal ability of cardiorespiratory system to deliver oxygen to the muscle, and the ability of the muscle to use oxygen to produce ATP aerobically. Both affected by genetics and training. Genetics, definitely there are certain genetics plays an important role where it contributes for higher energy production, and of course both together helps in having a good metabolic response. So about VO2 max, the peak oxygen consumption is influenced by the age, sex, and training level of the person performing the exercise. So you can see that the oxygen consumption, liters per minute, and work rate. So you can see linear increase where the oxygen consumption is also getting higher, and as the work rate is higher. So the plateau in peak oxygen consumption reaches during exercise involving a sufficiently large muscle mass represents the maximal oxygen consumption. So when it reaches the VO2 max, you have the plateau is achieved, and there is a involvement of sufficiently large muscle mass that is contributing for this maximum oxygen consumption. So the maximal oxygen consumption is limited by the ability to deliver O2 to skeletal muscle and the muscle oxidative capacity. So the muscle mass and the mitochondrial enzymes activity is contributing the So what are the possible limitation to maximal oxygen consumption? You can see the cardiovascular system, that is central circulation, that is cardiac output, the arterial blood flow, and the hemoglobin concentration. So peripheral can be possible limiting factor for oxygen consumption. And peripheral circulation, you can see flow to non-exercising regions, the blood flow to the non-exercising regions, muscle blood flow, muscle capillary density, and oxygen diffusion, whether how much oxygen is diffused, and whether the oxygen uptake is normal, and whether oxygen extraction is happening in the muscles, or hemoglobin oxygen exchange is happening. So these are the limiting factors for oxygen consumption. And in respiratory system, you can see whether oxygen diffusion, ventilation, whether during ventilation the amount of oxygen uptake or amount of oxygen that is coming in and out of the alveoli. The alveolar ventilation perfusion ratio also helps in identifying the maximal oxygen consumption, and arteriovenous oxygen difference. So similarly in skeletal muscles, enzyme and oxidative potential, energy stores and delivery, myoglobin and mitochondria size and number, all helps in identifying the uh, mm, uh, how much maximum, how much oxygen consumption can happen. So next is the ability to deliver oxygen to muscles, and muscles oxidative capacity limits a person's VO2 max as training increases VO2 max. So you can see here the oxygen consumption liters per minute. You can see of how the graph is going, and 100% VO2 max is in untrained is achieved at this point, and VO2 peak is achieved at around 175 and 200 minutes of work rate or distribution of watts. And at 70% of VO2 max, you can at the same point it is achieved by the trained individual, and here it is more of an untrained individual. So coming to cardiorespiratory endurance, the ability of the heart, lung, and blood vessels to deliver adequate amount of oxygen to the cells to meet the demands of prolonged physical activity. The greater cardiorespiratory endurance, the greater the amount of work that can be performed without undue fatigue. The best indicator of cardiorespiratory endurance is VO2 max, the maximal amount of oxygen that the human body is able to utilize per minute of strenuous physical activity. Methods for determination of VO2 max. So I'll not be going in detail about the methods, but I'll just mention about the various methods. The direct measuring of volume of air expired and the oxygen and carbon dioxide concentration of inspired or expired air with computerized instruments. The submaximal test is done with step test, run test, and stational bicycle ergometer, and physical work capacity, that is between 170 and 150 test, that is available on the net, and you can utilize this for evaluating the VO2 max. How does the respiratory system respond to exercise? During dynamic exercise of increased intensity, ventilation increases linearly over the mild to moderate range, then more rapidly in intense exercise. You can see the linear increase at of the ventilation utilization with liters per minute, and the work rate. The workload at which rapid ventilation occurs is called the ventilatory breakpoint, where the maximum oxygen utilization is happened here, and the further, because of accumulation of lactic acid and the bicarbonates is the contributing factor for releasing excess of carbon dioxide. Here the ventilation becomes very becomes high rate, so that is where you can see the ventilatory breakpoint that is happening. It usually happens at the lactate threshold, where the lactic acid also builds up in the muscle at the same point. The major factors which stimulate increased ventilation during exercise. The factors which stimulate increased ventilation during incline include the neural input from the motor areas of the cerebral cortex, proprioceptors in the muscle and joint, increase in body temperature, circulating non-epinephrine and epinephrine, and pH changes due to lactic acid. So these are the factors which stimulate increase ventilation during exercise. So you can see the blood pH. So as the intensity of exercises is going on, the pH drops and becomes more acidic because of the acidic components that is present in the blood. So it appears that changes in PCO2 and O2 do not play a significant role in during exercise. So before expected exercise begins, there is a ventilation rise, that is because of emotional hyperventilation. At any rate, impulse descending from the cerebral cortex are responsible for this kind of emotional hyperventilation. So the ventilated drive during the exercise, stimuli from the muscle, joints, perhaps sensory receptors contribute to the elevation of ventilation, which gives the information. So do chemicals originating in the active muscles. In dynamic exercise, they are carried in the blood to the arterial and medullary chemoreceptors and probably have their main effects there. In isometric efforts, the ventilated drive originates in chemically sensitive nerve endings. So how does the cardiovascular system respond to exercise? So you can see at VO2 max, it will be 25 liter per minute in a healthy but not specially trained young man, but 35 liters per minute in a well-trained aerobic athlete, and up to 45 liters per minute in ultra elite performers. So in dynamic exercise, there is increased muscle pump and increase sympathetic vasoconstriction, and increase in venous return, increase in stroke volume, and increase in cardiac output. So in dynamic exercise, the heart rate increases and increase in cardiac contractility, and thereby increasing cardiac output. Increasing muscle pump helps in ventricular filling, or increases in the as increases, there is an increase in venous return, and there is a decrease in skin and splenic blood volume, so that which also increases the venous return. Cardiac output. the cardiac output increases. There is increased cardiac output can be achieved by raising either stroke volume or heart rate. Steady state heart rate rises essentially linearly with work rate over whole range from the rest of VO2 max. From rest to VO2 max, increase sympathetic and decrease parasympathetic discharge to the cardiac pacemaker plus catecholamines, and reflex signals from the active muscles and blood-borne metabolites from these muscles and temperature rise all causes cardiac output to increase. So heart rate, endurance training, especially if maintained over many years, lowers the maximum by up to 15 beats per minute. It also, of course, lowers the resting heart rate in the training individuals. So what happens to the blood pressure during the exercise? The systolic pressure goes up to 150 to 170 during dynamic exercise, and diastolic scarcely alters. In isometric heavy static exercises, systolic may exceed up to 250 millimeters of mercury, and diastolic can itself reach 180 millimeter of mercury. You can see the dynamic and the isometric exercise, how the BP is varying, the blood pressure and the time. The muscle reflex the heavy exercises increases muscle lactate. The muscle chemoreceptors and afferent nerves causes medullary cardiovascular center, activates the medullary cardiovascular center. This increases the sympathetic neural outflow, which increases the heart rate and cardiac output per minute, plus vasoconstriction from the viscera, kidneys, and skeletal muscle, which causes vasodilation in the working skeletal muscle. Cardiovascular response in isometric exercise. The compression of intramuscular arteries and veins prevents muscle vasodilation and increased blood flow. Decreased oxygen delivery causes rapid accumulation of lactic acid, and stimulation of muscle chemoreceptors, elevation of baroreceptors set point, and sympathetic drive. The muscle chemoreflex takes place as a result of it. Mean BP is higher as compared with dynamic exercise, and increase systolic and diastolic BP. So you can, as the exercise intensity, you can see the mean arterial pressure, which is increasing in isometric and dynamic. So cardiovascular changes due to exercise. This is the heart dimensions and the training. So during endurance training, this is the ventricular chamber, which is untrained, and weaker ventricular chamber, which is highly trained. And during strength training, you can see the ventricular hypertrophy here. So in untrained and hypertensive or power lifters, where the ventricular hypertrophy is present. So what are the chronic effects of dynamic exercise? The cardiovascular adaptations to dynamic exercise training, adaptation that increase muscle oxidative capacity and delay lactate production, which causes decreased muscle chemoreflex, influence on cardiovascular system. As a result, sympathetic activity is decreased, which lowers BP and heart rate in trained people. You can see blood distribution, how the blood distribution takes place. So the blood flow redistribution is achieved partly by sympathetic nerve activity and partly chemically. So in rest, you can see the amount of blood flow to the brain, and you can see the various blood flow to skin and viscera and striated muscle. But during exercise, there is more increased blood supply to the striated muscles when compared to rest, and the brain, it remains the same, and in the skin it is reduced. So you can see the the blood flow from the lungs to atria to ventricle and pumps to the liver about 3 to 5%. And just mentioning about the cardiac output to different areas where it takes place, 4 to 5% supplies cardiac goes into coronary circulation, and 2 to 4% goes to the kidney, and 0.5 to 1% reaches the bone, and 3 to 4% goes to the brain, and 80 to 85% goes to the skeletal muscle, and 5% to the skin. Coronary blood flow, there is a increased cardiac output and increased coronary flow, as we may just saw, and increased endothelial cell shear stress, and increased endothelial dependent vasodilation occurs, plus cholinergic fiber stimulation. So simple, which is through the sympathetic activation. Muscle response. How does the muscle respond to exercise? So increased fatigue resistance is mediated by increased muscle capillary density and increased myoglobin content, increased activity of enzymes, the oxidative pathways, and increased oxidative capacity linked to increased number of mitochondria, and increased capacity to oxidize free fatty acids shifts the energy source from glucose to fat to spare the glucose. The chronic effects of dynamic exercise are moderate exercise increases oxidative capacity and fat usage, increase VO2 max and endurance, and causes decrease lactate. Response to high intensity muscle contraction. There is an increase in muscle strength via improvement of motor units recruitment in first to 2 weeks of training. Muscle hypertrophy, increase of muscle contractile elements, and there is no change in oxidative capacity. So coming to hormonal response during aerobic exercise. Our endurance system and hormones are the key players in managing the body's chemistry, that is the metabolic events. Increase in muscle strength via improvement of motor unit recruitment. So during exercise, if we concentrate on efforts of significant intensity, example 70% of VO2 max lasting not less than 30 minutes, there is a simple rule that all hormone rise over time except insulin. So the non-epinephrine rises again, the increased glycogen breakdown and elevates free fatty acids. Also cardiovascular effects, as in anticipatory phase, the glucagon rises, increase glucose release from liver, the cortisol rises, increase use of fatty acids, and the growth hormone begins to rise, stimulates tissue repair, and enhance fat use instead of glucose. So anticipating exercise, in anticipation principle involves catecholamines and hormones, particularly epinephrine and sympathetic activation. The systemic effect includes bronchodilation and intramuscular vasodilation, viscera and skin vasoconstriction, increased cardiac output, and metabolic effects include promotion of glycogenolysis and glycolysis in muscle, releases of glucose from liver, release of free fatty acid from adipose tissue. Cortisol also behavior is particularly complex in exercise at low intensity. Example 30% of max as easy jog. Some reports indicate that its level falls. Such gentle aerobic exercise relieves stress. So it can be understood that the cortisol levels increases even at mild exercise, and when it does rise at higher intensities, it peaks after 30 minutes, then falls off again. What are the other hormones involved in exercise are the thyroxine, T3 usually rise somewhat, but less than one might expect. Epinephrine requires more intense effort than non-epinephrine to raise it significantly in this phase. 70% max may be barely sufficient. ADH is also released in considerable quantities. It is not just socially inconvenient to have to urinate during exercise. It's a waste of fluid which will probably be needed as sweat. Uh, Testosterone and estrogen increase with exercise probably over many repetitions, promoting increased muscle bulk. And aldosterone also rises, reducing sodium loss in sweat. And in such, urine is has in still produced. So what happens in insulin? Insulin concentration falls significantly after 20 to 30 minutes of exercise and goes on falling if the exercise continues for 2 to 3 hours. So if we have to summarize this presentation, we can say that whenever you pick up a dumbbell to start exercising, the first repetition might be very easy, but as the number of repetition uh, becomes more and more, you feel that the energy levels are dropping down. So the energy source, the power for this muscle contraction is from where the what food we eat and what air we breathe, and this is only the component, and this component is utilized to or utilized to metabolize to produce energy. So you can see the initial ATP energy source where the phosphate produces the ATP, and there are other generators supplying the energy where glycolysis is supported by glucose, and here the bicarbonate stimulates the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. So if you have to explain this, if you can understand the car which is running on a battery, and as the battery depletion takes place, the ATP has to be, the energy has to be fueled from the petrol or the diesel in the car to charge the battery. Similarly, in us, it is the energy that is produced through ATP. So you can see normally in the car you can have only one source of generator that can produce the stimulate the battery to get charged, but we have in humans, if you have to explain, we can explain it as there are three motors which is generating energy to produce the ATP, and so that the activity or exercise intensity is on. So the glycolysis is powered by the glucose, and this glucose and glucose uh, the glycolysis end product is pyruvate and NADH, and when there is extreme NADH and pyruvate, where the glycolysis pathway, the glucose is not present, then there will be lactic acid accumulation, and it actually pyruvate and NADH stimulates the Krebs cycle in order to produce the ATP, and similarly the product of Krebs cycle, that is NADH, is available, which stimulates this generator to produce the ATP. Total the ATP, the production that takes place in the which helps in energy metabolism. So the source here is glucose, and for Krebs cycles in extreme condition, the amino acids are used, and this is we can say it is anaerobic metabolism, and this we can say it as aerobic metabolism. So now you can decide. I leave this slide for you people to answer. Why sprinter will never win with long distance runner at a distance of 3000 meters? So this is the question for you people to answer after this presentation. So these are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was quite informative. You have just briefed up about the physiology of exercise on various systems and all. So, moving on to the queries, we have few questions from the Facebook. Like one of the person has asked, like, one sec.
So there is a question which I can see in the chat box, ma'am,
Yeah,
which
sir.
says that how much we can push a football player during practice session, and what kind of exercise is best during the training session.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
That
uh,
was asked by Nasin Abraham. Yeah.
see, it all depends on the player's capacity. That's what we have to evaluate about his lactate threshold or his VO2 max, what he's able to achieve. And based on that, you can calculate the how much intensity we or what intensity and what areas that he needs to be trained. So again, which component, what kind of exercise is best for training session? I feel both aerobic and anaerobic exercise would be best for a football player, because he is using both the energy system during the game. But again, I would like to stress here, it depends upon his what time depend upon his training levels, or based on his VO2 max and lactate threshold, you can take a decision on this.
Yeah, sir. We have questions from Facebook. So Rajesh Kumar has asked that what kind of exercise does help to reduce fat and how much time we have to do.
See, as I told you, the fat metabolism usually it happens with low intensity exercise. So whenever an energy metabolism takes place, all the high intensity exercises is the source of energy is the glucose that is stored in the muscle, and the ATP PC system that gets activated, and followed by glycolysis pathway, and followed by Krebs cycle, where oxygen is required for both these metabolic events to take place. So low intensity exercise would be ideal. That is 50 to 60% of VO2 max would be ideal for fat mobilization, to consider for fat mobilization.
Yeah, sir. One more question is there. That is by Syed Shakil Ahmad. Which is better to reduce weight? Is it yoga or is it exercise which helps to reduce weight?
Okay, so yoga, as I know, is more of flexibility exercise, but a combination of yoga and aerobic, it also controls a lot of aerobic activity. So combination of both aerobic and yoga would be better, I feel.
So to all the attendees, if you want to have a direct interaction with the speaker, you can just raise your hand so that we can unmute you and you can move forward. So participants, is there any queries who want to interact with sir directly? So I guess there is no more questions, sir. Thank you,
Okay,
Bipin, sir.
I
It is quite
I hope it was
informative.
useful. It was extensive, and there is a lot of information to be expressed in this energy metabolism. I hope I was able to convey some amount of information to all of you, and I hope you understood some part of the explanation. Thank you, madam.
Yeah, I would like to thank Bipin sir for such a wonderful talk on physiology of exercises for briefing of various systems, how they work with regard to the exercises, what kind of exercises has to be preferred and all. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. And I would like to thank KSPF, who has been conducting this webinars during this COVID situation and helping us in knowledge transition. So I would like to thank each and everyone mm, for this.
And I would like to thank the Dr. Sai Mahendra for giving me an opportunity to speak. I also would like to thank President Dr. Ayappan for giving me an opportunity in this platform. It is a great platform, and I wish more experienced people also should speak. Though it is more monotonous when you are speaking in front of computer, we don't know what is the expression or what is happening on the other side, but I try to make it more interesting, and I thank Dr. Kirti also for giving me the in a nice introduction, and all the participants who had come and listened to this presentation, and for I thank the Karnataka State Physiotherapy Federation for giving me an opportunity to speak. Thank you, madam.
Yeah, thank you, sir.